Today I'm going to show you how to layer your heat transfer vinyl, also known as iron-on vinyl, using the slice and set method in Cricut Design Space, which is going to help extend the life of your t-shirts and fabric projects, especially ones that get washed a lot. I'm also going to be featuring some patterned vinyl. I don't do a lot of tutorials with patterned vinyl, but I wanted to feature one today, and I also have a post written below that will give you some great pointers, tips, and tricks on how you can use patterned vinyl in an effective way, because if you're like me at all, I struggle a little bit sometimes figuring out how to use the patterned vinyl in a cohesive manner to where you can still see the pattern, recognize it, and it works with the other elements in the design. The supplies I'm using for this project is a pattern heat transfer vinyl as well as an everyday iron-on vinyl. I'll be using a weeding tool, a Cricut machine, I'm using my Easy Press for this, and then you'll need a heat press mat. I'm also going to be using some uncoated butcher paper, and you'll need a t-shirt or some sort of fabric blank for your heat transfer vinyl material. So the slice and set technique can be used with heat transfer vinyl as well as infusible ink. With infusible ink, if you're doing multiple different colors, it is required to use what's called the slice and set method. So I'm going to be demonstrating that here today. So the slice and set method works really well for heat transfer vinyl on things like t-shirts because each layer is going to be making contact with the fabric below it, not layered on top of the vinyl itself. That is a viable option in some cases and can work, but when you're trying to work with certain vinyls such as pattern or glitter heat transfer vinyl, it's not recommended to layer over the top of that. So you can use the slice and set method to be able to create the layers you need without actually placing two different materials on top of each other. So here's our example design. I'm going to right click over this and I'm going to click on ungroup so that we've ungrouped all of those layers. Now in this example, I want to slice the peace sign out from this orange circle base because I want to be able to layer these together, but I want each layer to make direct contact with the fabric underneath it. So to do this, I'm going to select the, in my case, white peace sign here. So with my shift key selected, I'm going to also click on that orange circle. So we have the white peace sign and the orange circle selected. And then we're going to click on the slice tool at the bottom of the layers panel. It's important to note that slice will only work with two objects selected at a time. So make sure you have properly ungrouped and you only have two items selected when you do this slice and set method. So I'm going to click on the slice tool here. Initially with this particular design, it's not going to look like anything has changed, but let's pull the layers apart. We have our original white piece here, and then we also have this piece here that was sliced out from the orange. I'm going to get rid of the orange piece because I don't need it, so I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard, or you can use the trash can icon. And then we can go ahead and take the peace sign and put it right back exactly where it was, but instead of there being orange underneath the peace sign, now it is just transparent and it has been sliced out. Here is also a side-by-side look at the mermaid sole file where we did multiple slices for these different layers. And you can see this one here is the sliced result. And then the one over here to my right is what it looked like prior to going through slicing each of the layers. So for this mermaid example, I sliced the green mermaid out from the pink base, eliminated the extra pieces, and then I used my arrange tool to send the pink base to the back, and I repeated the process with an additional layer. So I sliced out the words mermaid soul from the pink base as well, eliminated the unnecessaries, and then again repeated the process, sending it to the back and slicing out that yellow layer as well for that final result. And then you needed to pull back over the words mermaid soul and the green mermaid from our copy because we had sliced those up through the process of the slice and set technique. So I'm going to start by placing my heat transfer vinyl onto my mat. In the case of iron-on vinyl or heat transfer vinyl, you want to make sure you put it pretty side down or shiny side liner down. That also means you need to make sure you mirror in Cricut Design Space. So when you're on the cut screen in Design Space, please make sure you toggle on that mirror button so that everything cuts out the correct direction. You'll need to cut these out for all the layers and colors for your particular project. This pattern I'm using here is a limited edition pattern that I created for a collaboration with Expressions Vinyl. I love Expressions Vinyl, so you can check them out if you're looking for a great online resource for your vinyl material. Once I get these cut out with the Cricut, it's time to weed. So you're just going to weed each one of these designs with a weeding tool. get them prepped for the application to our t-shirt. I've got my easy press here and I'm going to set it for 305 for 20 seconds. But if you are doing any layers that need to align very precisely like my example here, I highly recommend that all but the final layer be pressed for only 10 to 15 seconds, which tacks the vinyl down but reduces the heat exposure for that base layer. And I will explain why this is super important in just a moment. And just to create a center point, I'm going to fold the shirt down the center. And with my easy press, I'm just going to sort of create a bit of a crease down the center of my shirt so that it'll give me a frame of reference as a center point as I'm adding on this initial layer of my design. I'm going to open that back up and then I'm going to grab my design here and I'm going to use that as a guide. And I added a little fold to the center of my design as well at the top of the liner there, just as an extra visual aid. Take your time getting it lined up. This works well for V-neck shirts, but I've also done it with U-neck shirts as well. For this first layer, I'm only going to press it for about 10 to 15 seconds rather than the full 20 seconds. This minimizes the iron-on vinyl from shrinking and creating unsightly large gaps between your layers. Once you've tacked that first layer down for about 10 to 15 seconds, then you need to make sure you let it cool for at least 1 to 2 full minutes before you attempt to lift the liner off. If the vinyl is not easily releasing from the carrier sheet, you may need to give it more cool time. You also want to make sure you save your initial carrier sheet. I'm lining up my next layer here, and then I kept that first liner that we peeled off from our first placement of that heat transfer vinyl just to protect any overhang of heat transfer vinyl. Now I'm pressing this second layer for another 10 to 15 seconds. So one thing to note about iron-on is that it does shrink, and when we're adding layers like this can pose a challenge when trying to line up these layers if one layer has kind of shrunk due to the heat. So to minimize this, if you are doing more than 2 layers like I am here, I recommend only pressing the first couple of layers for about 10 to 15 seconds rather than the full 20 seconds. The reduction in the heat and time exposure can help your layers to stay aligned a bit better in the end. So all I have done here is just repeated that process a couple more times, adding those liners over the top to protect the extra vinyl underneath, and then go ahead and press it. Once you've gotten through all of the layers, you can go back and do one final press for about 20 seconds. Just make sure you're covering it with something like butcher paper or those liners to protect the surface of the vinyl. If you have any layers that you want to eliminate, for example, this mermaid here, I could technically leave that off and just have the mermaid silhouette be the pinkness of the shirt underneath. So that's always an option. My shirt is discolored here because of the heat, but it goes back to normal color as soon as it cools down. I'm removing that final liner there after repeating the process several times. And here is a look at our final result. You can see that it turned out quite well. If you look really closely, you can see maybe some minor areas where the pink is peeking through just a little bit, some of the edging, but overall it turned out really well. And I know that each one of those layers is making direct contact with my fabric below, which is fabulous because it's going to last a lot longer than having the vinyl layered on top of each other. Here's another shirt that I did, and I have several other designs like these that you might enjoy. All these designs in this Summer Vibes collection were created in mind for using with patterned vinyl. So patterned vinyl is a lot of fun to use, but it can also be frustrating to work with because sometimes you don't know how to showcase it in a way that you can still see the pattern and enjoy the visual beauty of the pattern. So I have some extra tips and tricks on that on the blog, things like which fonts you should choose if you're working with patterns and different types of designs to look for if you're wanting to use a patterned vinyl. So make sure you go and check that out. Go visit abbykirstencollections.com, keyword patterned vinyl, and you will find that full blog post as well as links to all of these designs and many more that you are seeing here. I hope to see you there, my friend. Bye for now.